So guys, I'm Beth Chesterton. It's great to see you all. This is Get Ignited. Get Ignited Conversations. As you know, we've got Olivia Ahnemann as our featured guest today. She's a rock star in the documentary filmmaking category of producer, sometimes director, and an amazing woman. She comes to us. I've met Olivia through somebody on this call who's very important to me, Amy Chesterton, who is an Ignite coach. Now, this is part of the Ignite method. The Ignite method is all about discovering and unleashing your genius so that you can accomplish the extraordinary. We actually have a process for that because we know that you can't see yourself without the help of others. So we have a very simple process to help people see what it is that makes them amazing. Often it's the category of unconscious competence so that they can really live their most extraordinary life. Now, we get stuck. I had somebody call me before the call and said, I'm totally stuck, Beth. She needed to be reminded of who she is at her best. She didn't say that. She just felt very stuck and depleted. And so we had a conversation and we talked about the common threads throughout her life and the things she does when she's doing things well, what she's doing. And she remembered part of herself. And something about the process, actually, what happens with the process is people end up feeling better and being more extraordinary. So, what I mean by that is actually going for things that they might not have gone for otherwise. This person said to me today, you're never stuck. I said I was stuck all of August, totally stuck. But it's something like this that helps me get unstuck. Now, Olivia. So we have this wonderful guest today. We're going to get to experience Olivia. And as extraordinary as she is, I guarantee you Olivia doesn't know exactly how amazing she is. Because she's a very humble person. There's lots of reasons, culturally, how we're raised, how it is in society. But at the Ignite method, we know that understanding who you are at your best is actually like a muscle that we need to develop so that we can actually be more effective, perform at optimum levels, and actually experience greater joy. So here's what I'm echoing. Don't forget to mute yourself. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to start talking to Olivia. Olivia, welcome. You're dialing in from New Zealand, which is where you're from, but you've been living in the US for quite a while. Tell us a little bit about where you are right now, what time of the day it is, what season you're in, etc.
Hi, it's so nice to be here. Thank you, Beth, for having me, and thank you, Amy, for reintroducing me to Beth. It's really just great to have the opportunity to talk to all of you. So I currently live in New Zealand. My hometown really is Boulder, Colorado, where we still sort of are grounded, and we moved here a year, 13 months ago, last August. It's 10:05 a.m. on Friday, so I'm, coming at you from the future. It's a rainy spring day. We're just coming into spring as you all are going into fall. And we just feel really, really fortunate to be here at this time. We did not escape to New Zealand for COVID. We found ourselves here when the pandemic hit us all this year. And we've been really, really just a little bit overwhelmed at the timing we've had on our chosen year to be overseas and the country that we're in. But yes, Beth, I was born in New Zealand. I was raised here. My family left New Zealand for what was supposed to be a couple of years when I was 6 years old. And we ended up living in the States for 20 years until my parents moved back here in 2002.
And it's interesting, Olivia told me a little bit about it. Just talk to us a little bit about how it is culturally in New Zealand in terms of leaving and what your family did when you first left.
Yeah, so sure. So I think a lot of Kiwis after university or after their secondary education do what people call as an OE or an overseas experience, and they leave New Zealand. New Zealand is a small island nation depending on which way you tip the globe, but at the bottom of the globe for most people's orientation. And it's culturally very normal to like leave your country and to go over, particularly to go over to England, because there's like visa exchange programs because it's a fellow Commonwealth nation. So culturally it's embedded for people to leave New Zealand and come back to New Zealand. My parents didn't do that after they were at university, and then they had this young family. I was 6, my sister 7, and my brother 8, and they decided they were going to move to London for a couple of years. But we ended up traveling around the US for 11 months in a caravan and a car, and settled in the States for 20 years. So their OE was extended by quite a while.
Okay, so this set her up for the rest of her life. If you think of it, she's essentially camping for 11 months. She's part of an adventuresome family. I don't even think Olivia thinks they're that adventuresome, because that was just the normal thing to do. But now we're going to get into how this may have been interesting and useful in her career in filmmaking. We're going to start with the Cove. I can't help it. If you have not seen the Cove, and for those who have not seen the Cove or don't know what it is, tell us a little bit about the storyline.
Sure. So The Cove is a film. It premiered in 2009. I'm getting my dates a little mixed. I think it was 2009. And it's about a cove in Japan where Japanese fishermen drive dolphins into this cove. The main reason for doing it is to select a few animals to then be sold into the captive marine mammal trade to become like performance animals in SeaWorld and other, parks around the world. But then what they do with the other animals is they slaughter them for the meat. So Louis Ahoyas, who is the director of the film, met a man named Rick O'Barry. He was one of the original trainers of the Flipper, for the TV show Flipper, and he trained the dolphins. And he had sort of I suppose you'd call it awakening about how that was not the way to treat these animals. And Rick had dedicated his life to bringing attention to the captive marine mammal industry. And Louis and Rick sort of hatched this plan to bring awareness to what was happening in the Cove in Taiji, Japan. And I think what really captured people's attention with this film, it was really the first documentary that had this thriller aspect where the filmmakers created this break into this cove. They built cameras to put underneath the water in the cove. They had cameras in rocks that were created to hide them, to really unveil what was happening and to reveal what was happening in the Cove. So it was sort of like this thriller movie, but it was a documentary. And it was really one of the first times that had happened, and that the filmmakers were really kind of like part of this, this undercover operation, I guess you would call it.
So it's an incredible story. And the Rolling Stone says, the Cove plays like a thriller. It has the breathless pace of a Bourne movie, but none of the comfort of fiction. It says, this is documentary filmmaking at its most exciting and purposeful. The New York Times says, the movie is a Trojan horse, an exceptionally well-made documentary that unfolds like a spy thriller. And it does. And we saw the picture of Rick, who was the person, if anybody is my age or above, you remember Flipper. It was a daily ritual to watch Flipper. And the story of Rick and how he actually went and he felt a tremendous amount of responsibility that he brought dolphins into such a sense of popularity with people. And then that they became very depressed as they were in captivity. But the story doesn't stop there, right? It just keeps unfolding with what happens in the Cove after you select your chosen dolphins with the slaughter, and they're selling them on pennies on the dollar for pennies on the yen. I'm not sure how you say that, right? They sell them for nothing for their meat.
Yeah, exactly. So the dolphins that are selected to be sold for like entertainment, they garner large prices of a couple $100,000 or $150,000. But then the other dolphins are slaughtered for meat because it's culturally or it's traditional. It's a tradition in Japan to eat whale and dolphin meat. We don't think of that as something we'd have on our plates. But we eat things that other cultures would find repulsive to eat. So, you know, there's that cultural part. But what the film also brought to light was, because dolphins are high on the apex predator food chain in the ocean, they have high levels of mercury in their meat and these are coastal dolphins that move along the coast, so they feed off fish and other seafood that is near the coast. And I bring that up because a lot of the runoff from factories, from farms, from all sorts of other pollutants are more concentrated closer to the coast. So these dolphins had high levels of mercury in their meat, and this was being sold in supermarkets under the title of whale meat. A dolphin is a cetacean, so it's not incorrect that it's a whale, but I think in Japan, most of what they would think of as whale meat would have been coming from Antarctica, which is a much different level of like heavy metal pollution in the ocean. And this dolphin meat was also given as sort of sold inexpensively to schools for a school lunch program. So you have young developing brains eating, you know, mercury laden seafood.
Okay, it's important to note that Olivia is not an activist. She does get involved in projects she works with activists all the time, but she's not an activist. She's a producer. And I really came to understand that as sort of the CEO of the project. She's over all elements of the project, including funding, including managing managing. It's just I can't imagine how complex it is, because you're bringing a team together who maybe has never worked together before, and you're creating an entire world of working intensely together for some period of time. But you had a really interesting experience with the Cove, right? So what happened before you joined and then you joined? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. So with all film projects, you come into them at different stages of production. Oftentimes I'm brought in at the very beginning, sometimes near the end, depending on what the needs of the production are. With the Cove, all of the Japan operations and filming were complete. The team that Luis Sahoyas was a first-time filmmaker. He had a very illustrious still photography career, but this was the first time that he had taken that sort of like visual talent to the film format. And he had sort of this ragtag band of brothers, I guess you would call them, who were the guys who had done the sort of cover up and the filming and not the cover up, but the revealing of what was going on in the Cove. And then they came back with this incredible footage, and they needed to piece it together into, a film. Half of the story in a film is captured in the field, and then really half of the film is made in the edit room. So there was a wonderful producer already working on the film named Paula Pessman, who's also from Boulder. She also runs a fabulous organization called There With Care, and there needed to be more sort of producing support on the film, like day-to-day management of the project. And so someone introduced me to Louis, and I came on to this team. And sort of really in post-production, although we had some shoots at interviews and things that needed to be filmed during the sort of post-production phase to really help stitch the story together.
Now, I know you did not go into this for awards, right? You didn't go into the But tell us a little bit about what happened once you when the film was, just tell us a little bit about what happened.
Sure. So we were making this film, like anytime you make a film, you are so like in the trenches with it. You have you come out on the other end like, oh my gosh, we have a finished film. We don't know what's going to happen. We got into the Sundance Film Festival, which is, well, we didn't know at the time really, but it's great, very competitive to get in. It's a great honor to get in. A film premiered, and it was the first time we were sitting in a theater with people watching the film outside sort of us, and we got a standing ovation, which was like totally thrilling. We're like, oh, what, maybe we made a good film. And The Cove went on to win an Academy Award for Best Documentary. It won the Directors Guild Award for Best Directing. It won the Producers Guild Award, Editing Guild. It won 70 other, awards with film festivals and things. So it really, we had no idea that was going to be the reaction to this film, and it just, was a great success. And I see, I know we have Amy and Chet on the phone, and Amy and Chet hosted an Oscar party at their house in Boulder, which was fantastic. I did not go to the Oscars. I had a brand new baby. She was like 3 months old at the time. And Amy and Chet hosted a fantastic night. We had so much fun. So thanks for that, you guys.
You want to weigh in, Amy or Chet? Anything you want to say to Olivia about the experience? You're muted though, Chetty. You're muted. Which I never mute you, but you are muted.
How can you mute him?
Olivia, it's wonderful to see you. But if I'd known that it was going to be such a big deal, we may have not hosted the party in the basement. Could have, gone big and.
It just gives you a glimpse, and oh yeah, go on, Amy.
Oh, that's it. We were very honored to have her at our house, but not so honored that we weren't in the basement. There you go. I mean, she is quite humble.
That's really funny. I'm sure you did not expect you were winning. And Chetty, what about you? Anything you want to say?
Yeah, I'm just glad we got to drink the champagne. We had plenty of it raring to go. So that was a great honor to have Olivia with us when they won the Oscar, and her reaction was so fun to watch. And she looked and turned around and gave her husband Michael a big hug and said, "I can't believe we just won the Oscar." And the corks popped, and it was really an honor to have something going on for something so fun. So really terrific. It's good to see you.
Yeah, I don't think any of us really knew at the time. Like, it was all like a little bit of a blur, and Chet's been like a super fan of The Cove ever since it came out. So we always appreciate his enthusiasm for the work, which is awesome.
Tragic movie.
Well, that's where we learned about it, was from you guys. We were on vacation, and of course, there were dolphins, and that's where I learned about The Cove. It was Atlantis, and so big impact. You've had can you talk a little bit about the impact of that?
Sure. As Beth and I were talking prior to this call earlier this week, and I've been very fortunate to work on these films that really have these sort of like acute social issues attached to them. And I've been fortunate to work with teams who really see film as a way to help move the needle on some of these issues. But film alone doesn't like create overnight change. I always think of it as a bit of like a tool in the toolbox of change. It's very effective of raising awareness, putting pressure on things, galvanizing groups of people to take action, introducing people to subject matters that they never thought they would be interested in, or that the issue even existed. I mean, who knew about Taiji, Japan, and dolphin hunting? The Cove has, since it came out, has been successful in limiting the number of dolphins that are killed each year. There's a tremendous amount of international pressure with activists that happen in Taiji every year, starting on September 1st, when the dolphin hunt season begins. It's like I want to say a 4-month season. There have been activists showing up to the Cove every day from the beginning of the dolphin hunt through the season for years and years. Another film came out after the Cove called Blackfish, and my colleagues at the Oceanic Preservation Society did a lot of impact work with that film. Blackfish had a tremendous impact on shutting down captive marine mammal programs in different parks like SeaWorld. SeaWorld's stock tanked after Blackfish came out and all the pressure that was put on from the impact campaign from that film. So back to Taiji, the dolphin drive has not stopped, fishing has not stopped, but I think that's truly something that the Japanese public, Japanese fishermen are going to have to decide for themselves whether that's aligned traditionally and culturally and where they want to go. I don't feel like it's a Westerner's job to demand that that's shut down. I think that has to come from culturally from within. It has, they no longer serve dolphin meat in their school lunch programs in Taiji. So that's, you know, a great positive result of the film. Yeah. Okay,
so there's so much here, and I can see in the comments already, Helen Onifer said she'll be watching it. And so people are really, some people are learning about it for the first time, and some people, as Chet and Amy, have been involved with you since the beginning. There have been so many projects since then. We've got Inside, Racing Extinction, The Human Element, Under the Gun, and each one of these projects is an incredible story. Now, I'm sort of want to ask you about what was it like to work with Katie Couric, and can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Sure. So I worked on a film a few years ago called Under the Gun, which really examined as Americans, our relationship to our gun policies and politics around guns. Katie Couric was the executive producer and also was in the film as sort of not really a host, but kind of in that role. I was brought on as a story producer. So unlike my role on a lot of films where I sort of like run the project from beginning to end and I'm involved in all aspects of it. With this one, I was brought on to produce the personal stories on the film. So I spent 18 months with families who had lost children to like everyday gun violence in Chicago or mass shootings around the country. And I didn't work, Katie came on some shoots, but not all of them. So I had the opportunity to work with her on a couple of shoots in the field, and we were at Sundance with her. And she's great. I mean, she's a journalist, and she would, you know, she's a very busy woman with a lot of different projects, and we would prep her on the people that she was going to be meeting and the goals of that shoot and where it was going to be in the story. And she would, you know, like come in for a day or two of filming and sit down and sort of moderate these roundtable discussions that we'd have either with proponents of gun rights and groups like that, or with, you know, a roundtable of victims and survivors of gun violence. Yeah, she was great to work with. And having a name, you know, and having somebody like Katie Couric as part of a film project elevates it to a certain level of, what's the word? People know about it, right? It's her, having her name attached to it. The press picks up on it. You can market and advertise the film as something that Katie Couric has worked on, and she's got, you know, a lot of name recognition and followers and things like that because of her long-standing journalism career.
I know this isn't the case in Under the Gun because, as you said, you were the producer of the stories, but oftentimes when you're in charge of everything, or one of the few people in charge of everything, I'm wondering, this is where I think, how do you bring a team together? And, you know, there's this, in my line of work, we talk about when the teams form, there's forming, which is like the honeymoon stage, and then storming, which is when everybody's bumping up against each other. And hopefully you get to norming, where you're coming up with norms, and then performing, which is when you're high performance. I'm wondering what do you do to bring the team together and get everybody heading in the right direction, working well together?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that's what's sort of fun with what I do too, is with each project, you are working on a different subject, you are working with a different team of people, you have all these like creative minds coming together throughout the process of the film. Your staffing changes because you have different needs. in a film, you normally have a core group of staff, which will be your producing staff and the director. And you know, you look to colleagues from past films to hire them and bring them on to a project. People you enjoy working with. You know, it's always everybody likes working with people they enjoy being around. You know, it like makes going to work fun. You try to match personalities too, and sometimes that doesn't always work well. You know, I've worked on teams, and I'm sure everybody has in their working life, where you have personalities that just don't gel well, and so you've got to kind of like to manage that. And with film too, you hire people you don't go out on shoots when the film is in production. You're not out in the field on a shoot every day, but you go through periods of time when you are. So you will hire cameramen and sound people and drone operators and data wranglers, and you bring them together for maybe 2 days or 5 days or 10 days to work. It's a really intense period of time. You work very, very long hours. So you need to you want to find people that have like the technical talent and the visual talent that you want to bring to the project, but also people you kind of want to hang out with 14 hours a day. That can be a big part of it. And then when you're out of production, you need to build your post-production team. So you're looking to hire editors, assistant editors, you hire color correction artists, graphic designers, composers, sound mixers and sound designers and things. So over the course of the project, people are sort of ebbing and flowing out of the work. And then that core group of like the producing and directing team is kind of intact throughout.
First of all, it sounds like it's so intense, right? It sounds very intense.
Yeah. But I don't know if it's any more intense than other people's work, right? There are lots of people who have to work and collaborate in a team and deal with personality issues and different strengths and weaknesses and things. So I feel like that's similar across a lot of different industries, I would imagine. I don't know. I don't work in.
I just think there's an element of the notion that it's like a startup in a way, except that people are very experienced in their fields, but they're coming together and you're creating something. It must be like a family in a way. And it's so intense, and then that it ends. It ends.
It does.
What's your favorite part? When are you most in flow? What's your favorite part of a project?
Oh, that's a good question. There's so many fun parts of it. I think at the beginning when anything's possible, you know, and like all the ideas are on the table and you're not bumping up against budget, you're not bumping up against schedule issues, you don't have like executive producers, you know, hanging too tightly over you. Like that's really exciting. Like the production part is really exciting where everything's, you know, but it's also quite stressful and intense. But that's a really fun part of the project. When the film starts really taking shape in the edit and you can see what it's going to be is also another really exciting part of it, because you're like, oh my gosh, like, yes, this is what we've been working towards. This is the story. Here it is. This is what it's going to look like. This is what it's going to feel like. Because until then, it's all pieces, you know, it's like footage from this day and footage from that day. And, you know, with a film like Racing Extinction, we shot 1,200 hours of footage that needed to get whittled down to a 90-minute film, including all of the stock footage and the graphics and the credit roll and all those other pieces. So how do you make selections? And that's where you have talented writers and editors that come in.
Well, this is so what I'm thinking about is the incredible amounts of ambiguity in the beginning when it's just so big and vast, all things are possible, and being comfortable and hanging with that level of ambiguity, but then bringing it together, which is part of what you do, right? And then you're shaping it with your team, but it's incredible to be able to go from that amount of ambiguity. So I don't think that's like everybody's job, but it is, lots of people experience ambiguity, but you're comfortable. It seems like you're really comfortable with it. One of the things I'm going to do right now is open up the conversation with the group, because again, it's the Ignite method. And we know that you cannot see yourself fully without the help of others. So I want to hear from people what you admire and what you're noticing in Olivia that's just incredible. Then we're going to come back to her current project, which is really exciting. And then we'll have questions at the end. But right now, I want us to focus on Olivia and what you're admiring and what you're noticing. And anybody can chime in. So.
Can I chime in?
Yes, Michelle. Hello.
Thank you, Beth. This is an incredible connection. Olivia, what a brilliant life that you've led, where you've got these New Zealand roots and you've been able to experience the United States in a caravan with your family. So what, now you're responsible for having a voice for these thriller documentaries, and with Katie Couric and this team that you've, what were you saying, Beth, formed and normed and performed with, does that give you some responsibility for whatever your next project's going to be? Because your voice is now, it matters. Your voice matters. We hear you when you speak and when you create projects.
Oh, thanks, Michelle. That's so nice. Yeah, I think the responsibility that I feel isn't. Hey, Luke, mute yourself. Thanks. Thank you for the music, though, Luke. That was really nice.
That's nice.
I think where my responsibility comes in is not so. It's not so much to my own voice, but it's to the voices that we're highlighting. It's the subjects in the film. Like it's so it's interesting. It's a really interesting question, Michelle, because there is a lot of responsibility I feel with these projects, but it's not around my own voice. It's around the responsibility to the project and to the film. A lot of these films are funded by individual donors, by foundations, by issue-interested investors. So I feel a great responsibility to them. They want to see change happen in the world through film as a catalyst to do that. I feel a big responsibility to the team that I build and I have, and the safety concerns about sending cameramen onto the front lines of wildfires and into hurricanes and anything like that onto the streets of Chicago, on the south side of Chicago, to film. So that responsibility, but I think most of all, it's for the people who trust us to tell their stories. That's a huge responsibility as a filmmaker, to make sure that you create this space and you are able to create an environment of trust and respect for people to feel like they can open up to you and share these parts of their lives in this very kind of public and vulnerable way. So I think that's where I hold that responsibility.
Okay, fantastic. Now, I appreciate that Michelle's from San Francisco and terrific coach and consultant. And, but anybody else want to talk about what you're admiring? Just name it, words. We can hear words. I'm reading things here. Somebody can step up. Amy said, Olivia's brave. I admire the way she can navigate through very tough issues with her work. It's true. Anybody else want to speak? Monica Black Robinson said she loves what she does. She can feel that, I'm certain, as we all can. Other comments? I love hearing from the group, but
I love how calm she is. Olivia is so poised and calm, and you would never expect that she has this huge role in these films. I really, I can see that you would have that calming force on your team and really kind of setting the tone.
I like what you're saying, Debbie. So calm, and the weight of the world can be on your shoulders. Olivia, I imagine that's one of the things you bring to your team that helps them. Do you experience that, where your calm helps people not be totally, I would imagine people could be on edge very easily in your field.
Yeah, it would be interesting to hear from the people that I work with, hear what they think about that. But yeah, let me think about that. That's an interesting question. I do try to create an environment on a film where, everybody's voice is heard, it's respected, there's honesty. That's a huge part of what I that I bring to a film, and that I hope that the teams can also feel like they can be really, honest and transparent about whatever it is, how they're feeling about the project or their own workload, or, because we work on small teams and it really is like, you wear all sorts of hats. It's like I'm also the human resource department a lot on the projects that I work at, because these small productions, we don't have human resources. We don't have people helping to navigate those parts of it. So yeah, I think we do try to create an environment that feels, I don't know, that does feel calm, because you are asking a lot of people too. It's long hours, it's an intense thing. People do come together, they're passionate about these subjects. You're in it together for, 2 to 5 years, and you're all working towards this one product at the end, which is, a film.
Well, with one of the things with the Ignite method is we really talk about what you do. It's sort of for free. There's parts of each of us that just comes for free. It's effortless. It may be that your calm is one of them, but your calm can allow other people to be fully expressed, fully creative, do their jobs really well, with you having, it seems to me, a sense of confidence in others. Now, here are some other comments we hear. I'm also a film producer. This is Gail Gallagher. So I understand what's involved. I really appreciate her confidence in what she does. Michelle Hoffman, I admire Olivia's ability to share a vital story through storytelling through film. Nina Windsor, I really admire the nonchalant manner she's able to have in discussing this massive undertaking. Nina's an attorney. Christine Beed, I like the way Olivia can see the big picture and work toward creating a goal. No. Toward that goal to create a film. And then we've got many more comments. It's a vast undertaking to create a piece of artwork from the concept to creation that is now a lasting message that can be heard over and over. So we're going to keep going. Oh, we got to hear Taylor. Olivia gave me my first opportunity in the film industry, and I'll be forever grateful for her empowering me to work in the creative sector.
Oh, Taylor, it's so nice to hear you and see you on the call.
Nice to see you too.
Oh, yay, hi.
Olivia inspired me to work in the film industry. She came to my class when I was a student and made a presentation about what she did for a living. And afterward I said, can I take you to coffee? I want to grow up to be you. And she hired me as the first intern ever that they ever had at the Oceanic Preservation Society. And I've now been working in film for 10 years, and I didn't even know that women could work in film until I met Olivia. And so it's been a huge blessing to know her.
Oh, Taylor, that is so nice. It's so good to see you. And Taylor is like one of these gems in the world that you are so lucky if you have her on your team. And it's been amazing to watch you take what you learned at OPS and translate it into a career for yourself and all of the great work you've been doing. So
thanks, Olivia.
Thanks for saying that.
You.
You too.
Olivia,
Taylor, that you spoke up.
I've been listening.
Donna, go Donna.
You have made, I'm speaking about Olivia now, you have made a subject matter of which I know practically nothing, quite understandable, interesting, and exciting to me. Also, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, when you make a documentary, sounds like that's rather different than making like a feature film or, what, I don't know how you would classify, but other kinds of films.
Yeah, that's
So
very.
I appreciate the way you've taken what is obviously a complicated subject and made it interesting and understandable.
Okay, now first of all, I want to say hello, Donna. Donna is in California also, and Olivia, we can come to that if you'd like, but I think the feedback is powerful. I did also step over somebody else's feedback, so smart, and Olivia's so smart, she shares her talents with the world. She's a force for good. We'll come back to Donna, what you posed, a question of the difference between documentary filmmaking and feature filmmaking. Always an interesting, Donna always brings up cool subjects. But I want to ask you, Olivia, people can still chat in, if you talk to us a little bit about your current project, and there's actually a way we might be able to actually help you with it.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I've been working for the last 18 months on a film called Youth v. Gov, so Youth versus Government, with an amazing female director named Christy Cooper. This is her first feature-length documentary. And the story follows 21 young plaintiffs as they sue the US government over their constitutional right to a stable climate system. And we're almost finished. We're in sound mix now. We're about to finish the story, but this incredible group of young people who are now ages 12 to 23, but when they started the case in 2016 against the Obama administration, they were ages 8 to 19, I think I've got that right. And they have been brought together by an organization called Our Children's Trust, which had some state level cases against state governments and for perpetuating the climate crisis. And they filed a suit in 2016 in the federal level, suing the executive branch of government, which at the time was Barack Obama's administration, and then Donald Trump inherited the case when he took office. And the film looks at 7 decades of evidence of the federal government willfully acting and creating the climate crisis. For a constitutional case, it's not inaction that you have to prove, but it's willful action that you have to prove. So these 21 young people from all over the country, they're an absolutely courageous, smart, inspiring group of people who have found their voice as like activists, as not all of them are activists, but their childhoods have been steeped in this case and in this work for climate justice.
It's really, tell us a little bit more. I'm interested, give us a little sampling of some of the plaintiffs, what they're like.
Sure. So the photo that Sandy put up is of Levi. Levi is from Florida. He lives on a barrier island on the east coast of Florida. And his another part of the case is that you have to prove harm. The constitutional case requires you prove harm, causation, and redressability. So Levi has had to evacuate his home over the course of the film 3 times to get out of the way of like climate enhanced hurricanes. You have Kelsey Juliana, who is the named plaintiff. She's from Eugene, Oregon. She's a dynamic young woman. Here they're pictures. In the middle of this picture with the blue tie is Alex Losnack. He is also from Oregon. He grew up on a family farm in Oregon. He just graduated from Columbia University. He's applying to law school. He's a fascinating young man. To his left in the photo is a young man named Vic Barrett, who is an amazing person. Vic is a transgender male. He grew up in New York City area. His father is a climate denier. So Vic and his dad have these very interesting conversations about Vic's work as a climate activist and his father's belief or not belief in climate change. Vic has really found his voice. He is often on panels. He's really interesting young man. Who else do I see in that picture? There's Aji, who's to the right of the frame of Alex. Aji's from Washington State, and he is a musician, really strong person. Another musician in this group is Chet Martinez, who has been a real force in the youth climate movement. He's from Boulder, Colorado. He's Native American, Aztec, and he uses music and wrapping to really bring attention to environmental issues and the climate crisis. Another young Native woman plaintiff, her name is Jamie Butler. She grew up in Arizona on a reservation. She is seeing how a severe and sustained drought is threatening not only her land, but also her culture, and how, as she said, we can't just move. Our land is our identity. This is our culture. These are our traditions. And for us to just pick up and move, because of drought, we can't do that. So all of these kids come at the climate crisis from very different and personal ways, have all found their voices in their involvement in this case. Some of them are much more outspoken than others. They're all smart. Some of them have parents who are environmentalists. A lot of them don't. They're all in this for themselves. They're not being kind of like propped up by their parents. They're all like, their own participants in it. It's fascinating.
Well, I love that. First of all, to have 21 young people together in this project there's a lot of energy with that. It's got to be a lot of fun and also a lot of passion working on that, probably intense. I'm wondering, there's something we can do to help. This is a new part of our Get Ignited conversations. They're obviously free. We're so glad that you've taken the time to join us, Olivia. And if there's anything we can do to help, I'd love you to share. If anybody's so moved, there's no pressure to anybody in the audience, but if somebody's moved and wanted to contribute or help, how can they help?
Oh, so nice. Thanks, Beth. So Youth v. Gov, our film is fully funded. We're nearing the end of it. We've applied to some film festivals. We hope to premiere the film later this year or early next year, and then have sort of a distribution of, commercial distribution, as well as a big impact campaign that goes along. So you can watch the film when it comes out. You can share the film. You can follow us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Youth v. Gov the film. So just being aware that the film is there and it's going to come out. We are raising money for the impact campaign. You have these films or these one project, you sort of like give birth to this film. And then with a lot of these issue-based projects too, you want the film to do work out in the world. So we are launching an impact campaign that we're raising money for. If anyone's is interested in supporting that, you can go on to youthvgovthefilm.com. There's a support button, and that would help bring, our goals for the impact is really to reach out to young people and to adults who work directly with young people. A lot of what the youth express is that there are barriers to entry for this work and really being involved in climate. And I think our job as adults is to support them in any way we can and give them access to, to climate, to bringing their voices to the climate change movement. We'll do community screenings and virtual screenings. We'll, host panel discussions. We would like to get kids into civic education, like how to be a citizen, how do you hold your government accountable, like as a citizen, what are your avenues for holding your government accountable? There are lawsuits, you can run for office, you can vote, you can do most of us, and kids know that there are 3 branches of the federal government that they can pressure to create change. So those are some of the things that we hope that the film will do. We're just kind of bringing straight shape and strategy to that impact campaign, but there's a lot of really exciting work that can happen.
Well, I look forward to following it. It's just such a fresh, I hadn't ever heard of young people doing something so extraordinary. So it's very exciting. And again, groundbreaking, I'm sure, just like the Cove was groundbreaking in changing the way we experience information that could be about science or any subject to make it. And then you're going to change things again, I think, by shining a light on this.
Yeah, these kids are amazing. And Julia Olson, who's a lead attorney, is incredible. Our Children's Trust, the organization, they're doing really, really interesting and innovative work around climate.
Well, so we're going to, if anybody has a question, Donna earlier asked the question about the difference between documentary filmmaking and feature filmmaking. If anybody has another question, please chat it in. So you may want to think, can you comment on Donna's question earlier?
Sure, it's a really, it's a good observation, Donna. Yeah, documentary film is very different than scripted programming, either television or scripted narrative feature films, because you don't, you plan, you research and you develop your story prior to filming, but you don't really know what's going to unfold when you're out there. You don't know what's going to happen with your characters. You don't know what sort of like twists and turns of life, especially if you are following something like the director, Christy's been following this case for 4 years, and all of the highs and lows and changes in the case, and you have to be there to capture what is going on. Unlike a narrative scripted piece of work where you go out and you shoot to a very specific script, so it is quite different. You do a lot of like fly by the seat of your pants with documentary filmmaking.
Now, Justine Bede, who's a filmmaker, young filmmaker on this call, said, thank you for sharing your time and story. I really admired the work you're doing. My question is, how did you break into the documentary space?
Oh, that's a great question. And so I kind of fell into it. I didn't know that I wanted to be in film. I have no education in like formal education in film school or documentary filmmaking. And I was introduced to a producer who needed help with a film that he was doing. I kind of came on to help with, logistics. This was through a job I had working for a travel magazine. And I just fell in love with the format and the story, the way that you bring all these, visuals and sound and interviews and music. And it just really kind of captured my imagination, I think, was working in this format and this way of telling stories. So, and then, the people I met on that film, I said, oh, I'm interested in doing more of this. And I was given, research and development jobs, and I was hired as an associate producer on another project. And it was through those contacts and networking that I just, 20 something years later, I look back and I think, oh, this has become a career, which is funny.
Oh, okay. So here's a good question. Olivia, the youth VGov and many of your projects and subject matter are hard hitting, even controversial. How do you deal with the criticism of the films you've passionately worked on?
I think when you make these films, you know that they're not gonna speak to everyone, that there are going to be people who don't agree with the point of view you're taking in the film. In some ways, as a producer, I'm 1 degree separated from that criticism because I'm not the director in most cases. So oftentimes the director is the one who, this is their creative vision. This is the story they really want to take. And my role is to support that vision and help bring it to life. There's always going to be controversy around this. You have a whole, like Under the Gun, a lawsuit was brought against Under the Gun by a gun rights proponent group. So they obviously weren't pleased with the way that we, told the story. So you just kind of roll with it, with environmental films or climate change. We're never speaking to the climate deniers. As far as we're concerned, it doesn't matter. That's not our audience. If we can take people who are on the fence, who kind of know something's not right in the world and things seem a little out of balance, and we can get them over into the camp of, advocating for strong environmental policies, pressuring our government to take action against climate change, then that feels, like we've done our job. So you've tried to filter out, I think, oftentimes the criticism comes from the fringes and not from kind of like the core group of people you're trying to reach.
Now, I have to say, we talked a little bit about your family, right? You came here in this adventuresome way, and that's how you entered the U.S. And I do think in a way it really did prepare you to sort of set up again and again and create a home again and again with your film team. But we also have another early memory, a root, and Sandy's going to put a picture up. And then we want to ask you how you survived this very important job.
I'm so sorry. I actually don't have a picture.
That's
so,
okay. Well, we're going to have a picture.
Give me 1 second.
I have somebody here who can help, and he's highly motivated to do it, Paul. So he'll get a picture. So tell us a little bit about how you met Amy.
Sure. So Amy, who is Beth's sister-in-law, wife of Chet, Amy and I worked together as waitresses at the Barnacle restaurant in Marblehead, Massachusetts when we were both out of college. We worked there for a summer together. And I like to say we like slung fried clams and Bloody Marys at people, but it was like a really fun restaurant right on the water. There it is, the Barnacle. Oh, it's like, you know, home. And that was a crazy place to work, but it was great. I love the Barnacle. Go back to it every time I'm in Marblehead. And you know, I think the lessons you learn as a waitress, I mean, it's such a fun, I always thought it was a really fun job. I loved the people that I worked with. You know, you have to work your tail off because you're, you know, working for tips. But I think part of it is like, it's relationship building, right? It's like you're working with a team of people. You've got the guys in the kitchen and you've got the staff. Oh, yeah. That's a good picture.
That's the picture that Paul wanted to put on this and say, how did you ever survive working at the Barnacle? Yeah, it's an incredible.
I think we were open on days like that, really.
If you look at the picture, there are people in the window, right? So that's what Paul loves about that, is that there are people and they're pretty casual.
They're pretty casual. It's a pretty casual group of people that would hang out there, the regulars, anyway.
But you guys had so much fun, and that's how it came to be that we got to meet you. I'm married to a man from Marblehead. A lot of people who know me know that. Paul's brother and sister-in-law are from Marblehead, and we have Olivia, who, you know, that was one of your homes, is Marblehead.
Absolutely, a big part of my life. Yep, I still consider Marblehead home in a lot of ways. And, you know, and I have to say, like, one of those, you know, how I reconnected with Amy was when I moved to Boulder, or my boyfriend, who's now my husband, moved to Boulder, and I was there visiting him, and we were shopping at Safeway, and I like nudged Mike and I said, I know that woman over there. And he's like, go say hi. I'm like, oh, I can't. I'm so embarrassed. I can't go say hi. And then I went up and said hi to Amy and Chet. And we like really reconnected and have been friends for a long time. So don't be shy with people that you know and you want to reconnect with from your past. I encourage everybody to step out of your comfort zone and reach out to those people.
I really want to appreciate.
I'm glad you said hello in Safeway.
Yes, me too. Me too.
It worked out pretty well, don't you think? Olivia, thank you so much for your time. And thank you for sharing your stories and being so real and authentic with us. And to everyone on the call, thank you for being here today. It's been an incredible, to hear about your journey. And I just really appreciate you sharing it. And I feel thrilled to have met you. And if you guys are going to be anything like me, I've been watching documentaries for days, having a ball, and just so immersed in different worlds that I've been learning about. So thank you so much, Olivia.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for all of the kind comments, all of the wonderful questions. What a wonderful group of people. And Beth, for curating these conversations, like amazing that you're putting this out for everybody to participate in. And it, you know, it's really just such a nice community of people. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you. And we will share the chat with you. There are some real gems there, and I can't wait to connect. I'll connect after this, and I really appreciate it. And thanks to everybody. And don't forget, next week, same time, we have Jill Farmer, who is all about, she's about time and how to make and how we see time, but also she works with really exciting people across the country, helping them make the most of their time and avoid burnout. She's awesome. You guys are going to love her. I really encourage everybody to come to see Jill Farmer.
Yes.
Olivia, we are sending our best from right now from the Midwest to you, from all over the country, and can't wait to hopefully meet you again one day when you come back to Boulder.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Bye,
bye.
Olivia.
Bye.
Have a great
Bye.
day.
Thank you.